Hey guys, and you're welcome to Check My Guns. My name is Karl, and today we will look at what I consider to be the Holy Grail of Czechoslovakian semi-automatic rifles, ZH32. Let's check it out. Some of you will probably object that this looks exactly like ZH29, and you are actually right, because ZH32 was a successor of ZH29 and the differences are really insignificant, but we will get to that later. So as usual, we should start with a history. So ZH is connection of words Zbrojovka Brno, as Brno Farms company, and Emanuel Holek, that's the H there. So Emanuel Holek was the father of these rifles. And I already made one video about one of his semi-automatic guns, original Holek automat. Well, you can see it up here, where I discuss history of this man. So I'm not gonna say it again, but I will tell you what we need to know when we are looking at these two guns. So what we need to know for now is that Emanuel Holek worked on a concept of semi-automatic rifle way before he came up with this design. And that was in the year 1925 when he started working for a CZ factory in Strakonice. And he came up with a rifle called HB. H stands for Holek and B for Beneš. Beneš was the director of CZ factory in Strakonice at that time, and he wasn't probably designing the rifle, but he was supporting Holek in developing of such rifle. But Holek wasn't working in CZ in Strakonice for so long. He was there actually just for 2 years, and in the year 1927 he moved to Brno, where he started working for Zbrojovka Brno, where his brother already worked before, and he came up with a new design. And that's what we have here, ZH29 design, obviously in the year 1929. In the year 1929, Emanuel Holek was already competing against other semi-automatic rifles with his design of ZH29. For example, in USA, when US military was looking for a new semi-automatic rifle. So we have this picture from this testing, and he was successful, but we now know that he didn't really won the contract, that M1 Garand was adopted by US military. And those rifles really had some export potential, because many nations and armies were looking for semi-automatic rifles at that time, or maybe just thinking about it. But this concept was always fighting against the old way of thinking from the First World War, when officers thought that soldiers will just waste all the ammo with semi-automatic rifles, that they are just too expensive to manufacture, too complicated, it can have some reliability issues. So even though everybody was thinking about it and probably even trying to test it, not many countries actually adopted semi-automatic rifles. Actually, it was only USA and Russia before the Second World War. So who actually decided to buy ZH29? Well, the biggest shipment was to the North China, where military leader, his name is here, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that, was a big fan of Zbrojovka Brno. And he already had some experience with ZB26 light machine gun, because that's what his army was using. And after he was given as a gift chrome-plated ZH29, he loved it. And he ordered 2 shipments with each 150 rifles in year 1930, so 300 rifles in year 1930, and then additional 135 rifles in the year 1933. And now I should probably tell you what's the difference between the ZH29 and ZH32. There's actually not much. When you're looking from outside, they look completely same. Only just internal parts were changed a bit, you know, to manufacture it better way, to design it so it lasts longer. So the dimensions of internal parts were changed, but from outside they look completely same. And we can only guess if the last shipment into the North China, those 135 pieces in year 1933, were ZH29 or ZH32. But what we know for certainly is that these 2 rifles comes from the shipment which came next, and that was into Abyssinia, or today's Ethiopia. And the whole shipment was just ZH32, so that's exactly what we have here. So now you know that North China wasn't the only country buying ZH29 or 32. Ethiopia was also very much interested, and these rifles were actually even tested by Ethiopian king. Here's the name, again, I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. And we have a picture of that, you can see it here or here. He really liked ZH29 and he ordered 100 rifles for his personal guard. We can saw it on that picture. So Ethiopian contract was the second biggest after the China. And also there was one smallest shipment of 50 rifles into Lithuania for their police in year 1931. But those rifles, ZH29 and ZH32, they were shown all over the world, in Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, in many countries. And we also have pictures, for example, from testing in Spain. And everybody probably liked it, but nobody really adopted it. So even though it was the only Czechoslovakian produced semi-automatic rifle, even in a higher volume than just a couple of pieces, it wasn't really that successful and adopted by any country before the Second World War. And now we should talk about Czechoslovakian military. Czechoslovakian army was also interested in semi-automatic rifles, but they were not really thinking about adopting it because of the same reasons as the other armies: wasting ammo, too much expensive, and reliability. But they still put them in trials, and actually ZH29 was competing against the CZ Model S, which was basically the HB rifle designed by Holek. So there were two rifles, ZH29 competing against Model S, and both of them were designed by same designer, which is pretty interesting. And the purpose in Czechoslovakian military, which they were tested for, was to be used by cavalry and against the low-flying aircrafts. But unfortunately, they were not really accepted before the Second World War. So now it's time to take a closer look on both of these rifles. They are from the Ethiopian contract, so it's ZH32, and they are in a quite rough shape because they were actually dug out from the ground somewhere in Ethiopia. So let's take the camera closer and we will look at that. So let's look at these two rifles. First I would look at markings. So if you look at the top of the rifle, usually here were markings ZH29 and the serial number here on the top. Here we see that there is actually nothing on the top. If we look from this side, there are actually only markings for safety positions, position 1 and position 0. And if we look from this side, here we see there is written Československá Zbrojovka Akciová společnost Brno. And here, which is less visible, here's a Lion of Judah holding a banner, which is the crest of Ethiopia. So even though it was dug out in Ethiopia, we can be sure that it's from Ethiopian contract. Same here, but it's much less visible, so you cannot really see it. But what's interesting between those two models is actually the gas port and gas port adjustment system. If you look in the front, this is really significant difference. There is a different turret to adjust the gas port. I can only guess that this smaller one was probably on ZH29 and ZH32 had a bigger one, but that's only my speculation. I cannot really tell. One more thing I want to tell you before I take it apart, and that's also the craziest thing about this rifle, is here. You see that those iron sights in the back are actually off center. They are not in the center of receiver. And if you look in the front, also the iron sights on a barrel are also offset, this time to the right. And that's because the whole barrel is actually not parallel with the receiver. If you look from the back, we see that the whole barrel is actually angled 1 degree to the right. And that's because of the tilting bolt, which is actually here locking into the side of the receiver. And it's actually angled also, so the whole barrel had to be angled. And we will look at that in a second. I'll just take the magazine out. And now if we look, here is the bolt and bolt carrier. And if I unlock it, you see how it unlocks. So this is the position when it's locked, and it's also you know, angled a bit, so it had to be parallel with the barrel. So that's why the barrel is not parallel with receiver. Pretty crazy solution, but that makes this rifle so great actually. So if we look at the rifle from outside, we see here's the charging handle on the side, connected with a bolt. It's a bolt carrier. This is actually a long stroke gas-operated semi-automatic rifle. Here's the gas chamber with a gas piston going all the way here into the charging handle, which unlocks the bolt here. That's what we see, how the bolt locks into the side. Here we have a cutout for stripper clips. Here we have offset iron sights, which are really crazy when you want to sight in. Here we have a safety. Now it's on 1 and 0. 1 is for fire position, 0 is safe position. Those are disassembly pins and 2 sets of sling swivels. There is a bottom butt plate made of ripped metal. And here we have actually markings which says number 80. Probably, and another crest of line of Judah here. Or it's not 80, huh? I cannot really read that. And here in the front, another 2 sets of sling swivels and this big chunk of aluminum for cooling. Here we have bayonet lock, again the gas regulator and front iron sights, and all is holding on this front nut. Another thing you can put on a ZH29 is bayonet, because it was actually fitted with bayonet from a VZ24 rifle. So you can easily just slide it on and it fits perfectly. Another interesting thing with ZH29 is that you release the bolt with a trigger. So you don't have another moving part you have to bother about, but when you're empty with your ammo, you put the stripper clip there, for example, or your magazine, and you just press the trigger. And the bolt closes and you can fire now. If you look at the magazine on ZH29 or ZH32, it actually comes from the standard magazine used for ZB26 light machine gun, but it was made only for 10 rounds for semi-automatic rifle. But you can still fit the 20 round magazine, which was originally on a light machine gun of ZB26. What's interesting is also that there is this spring-loaded catch, which holds the mag in a spot, but there's also another one here in the front, which is also spring-loaded. So you don't have to do this classic rocking motion, putting the front there first and then lock the back. You can put it there straight and just push it inside, which is really cool. And another cool feature is that there is a combination of 2 systems for bolt stop. Now we don't have a magazine inside, so we shouldn't be usually able to lock the bolt in a back, but here we see that it locks in a back. And that's because of the trigger. The trigger is actually holding the bolt back. So how it works when you're actually shooting, that after each round your bolt is not stopping in a back? Well, simply because the whole recycle process is so fast that you're still holding the trigger. So if I press it here, which unlocks the bolt, and now I press it as firing and the bolt goes back, I'm still holding the trigger and it goes forward. And now that's when magazine comes in, because actually the magazine also works as a bolt stop. So if I put it here and we don't have any ammunition inside, any cartridge, I press the trigger, put it back, it stops. So yeah, bolt stop is a combination of 2 factors: the trigger and also empty magazine, which is pretty cool. And now if I take this out, I can release it with a trigger again. So to disassemble this rifle, it's pretty easy. You have to push
this and this pin. This one is pretty easy going, or if not, we have this multi-tool to help with it. So as I said, pins are captive, the other one is here, so again I have to, well, now you can actually, you see that now it's disassembled into the lower and upper part, but to take it apart properly we have to push this other pin. Finally, and we have it in two pieces. So here we have the trigger system, which is pretty easy. Here's the catch. And if we compare it to the ZH29 trigger system, we see that there is this different shape on the top of the hammer, because ZH29 has actually a little bump here, which holds the whole bolt carrier in a back, and then when you press the trigger it actually moves slightly down, and that's enough to release the whole bolt assembly, which goes forward and closes in the front. Here we have the safety, so if I put it on safe, we see that this little part inside rotates, and now if I press it, this little piece actually stops it, and we cannot really push the trigger. But if I put it back on fire position, it fires. And if I take only the bolt out and show you here, so this is the position here of the trigger when it's locked, but when you press a little it makes space, so the whole bolt goes forward, and actually this angled surface pushes the hammer down, so you can release only the bolt and release the trigger later on and fire with that. So with the recoil spring being here, it's actually pushed by this edge on a bolt carrier, pushing here, and yeah, that compresses the spring and makes the cycle go back and forward. And here with bolt, it's locked. This is unlocked position of the bolt. This is actually locked position with this part, this edge being locked into the recess, into the side of the receiver. So if I grab here the receiver and I put the bolt there the way it should be, you see that the final movement goes into the side like this. So this edge locks here into this recess, and to extend the lifetime of the gun, actually this part, which is probably under the most pressure during the locking and unlocking, is replaceable. You just unscrew this bolt and screw a new part right here where the bolt locks, which definitely helps a lot. And so yeah, and here we have the on a bolt carrier in one piece with a piston going all the way forward into the gas chamber right here, and here we have a gas port. And this part actually comes off just by losing this nut in the front. I can do it easily with my hand now because we tried it before. There are actually two nuts, one and second. Take it all off. So this is a sleeve on the barrel with bayonet lock, front iron sights, and also gas chamber. Here's the gas port going here that fits with the piston, and here should be probably a cleaning rod. and that is attached to this ventilated forend, which is just a huge chunk of aluminum, which should help with overheating. And here we actually have a number 109, which is probably the same number we can actually find on a stock, which I couldn't read. So yeah, that makes sense, 109. So even though we know that there were only 100 pieces sent to Ethiopia, maybe there were more, or maybe they were differently numbered. Other than that, there is not much to be seen. Here's the gas port on the barrel, and I'm not gonna untie this another nut which holds the wooden forend there. So this is probably the most complete disassembly you can do with ZH32. So now I should put it back together. Let's put it back together. So I will start with this aluminum chunk with the number 109, and actually that reminds me that the other one we have here actually has number not on the bottom but here on the side, and it's number 107. So maybe they were the first from the contract and the serial numbering start with number 100, who knows. So I put it like there. I put there a sleeve, and actually the sleeve is secured to be in the right position by these two flat parts or flat surfaces on a side, which actually are placed here where the thread is missing, and actually it's made also flat, so you can really turn that sleeve around and it's fixed into its position. So I put those nuts back there. It's pretty fine thread, so it takes a while. So that's it. Now I put the bolt back together with the bolt carrier. The pin is in the way, but now it works perfectly. And I put the, that's good. So I put the lower part, the lower there too. And I'll just secure the pins in the right position. And here it is, back together and working.
Okay guys, so this is all about these rifles ZH29 and ZH32 we have here, and I have to thank the owner of these rifles for the opportunity to show you these beautiful pieces, these beautiful rifles, and it's a beautiful piece of Czechoslovakian firearms history. So if you like the video, press like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.